Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to take a look at another Mattel Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous figure, and this is one of my favorite figures of all when it comes to the entire Mattel line because it is a Monolophosaurus. This is obviously a new version of the Monolophosaurus as it's a Savage Strike repaint. We've had this figure quite a few times in the past, and it's definitely one of my favorite sculpts overall as far as the Mattel figures go, and I really love this newest paint scheme on the figure. It's one of those figures that initially I was pretty excited about it, but not anything crazy. But once I actually got the figure in hand, saw it in person, I was instantly sold on this really nice looking paint application that we have. Really cool looking paint scheme. Definitely one of the nicest versions, I would say, of the Monolophosaurus so far. Mattel really impresses me quite often with the amount of figures that they've released, yet they still find ways to create really nice realistic looking paint schemes on their figures that differ from the previous ones. So again, very impressive as far as that goes. But you can see as far as the packaging, it's pretty much your standard Mattel Camp Cretaceous packaging. You have Monolophosaurus down here, some of the Camp Cretaceous kids right there, as well as Toro kind of looking like he's about to bite their heads off, and then you have an image over here of a little bit of the action feature of the Monolophosaurus, and then if we turn it around, you can again see we have that kind of art book right here, another image of the Monolophosaurus and its action feature, as well as an image down here in the corner showing off the other Savage Strike figures in this wave. So without further ado, let's go ahead and break this out of the box and take a look at it. So here is our new he doesn't want to stand because I don't have his feet in the right spot, but here is our new Monolophosaurus. If I could just get his feet to position correctly. I don't know why they don't want to right now. So some potential stability issues with this figure, but I'm not entirely sure if that's something that is going to come into play once I actually can look at the figure for a second and sort out the placement of the feet. But again, a really nice looking paint scheme. I absolutely love this paint scheme on the figure, but I've been a fan of the sculpt for quite some time, so I knew I would like the figure. Just, you never know how much you'll like it till you see it in person. But let's go ahead, we'll get a closer look at the figure right now. So, of course, we have reviewed the sculpt of this figure previously. We've reviewed it a few times as there have been numerous releases of the Monolophosaurus at this point. I'm not sure how many, but we definitely have had quite a few. So what we really need to look at is what is new with the figure, and that primarily would be the paint application. So looking up here at the head, we have a very nice mixture of a few different colors, as we have kind of like this darker, it's like almost like a greenish color, like a very odd, very dark green, like a military green almost. And you can see that's basically the color of the lower jaw, but it also creeps up into the face here, leaks up in a few different areas, and then it mixes really nicely with a yellowish coloration, and then a beautiful red, which highlights the crest of the Monolophosaurus quite nicely. And you can see that red kind of like spots and stripes down in a few different areas, and I really like how it just kind of highlights that area, but then it just disappears. You don't see that red anywhere else in the rest of the body, so it's again a really nice coloration that's quite beautifully showing off this area, which would be an area I would expect to have, some pretty nice coloration to it. But otherwise, you can see that we have a really nicely painted eye. It's got a beautiful green coloration, and I think that kind of a light green really shines quite nicely as far as playing off of the colors that are up there on the head, and it's perfectly placed, which is something that is always, again, a concern when it comes to a Mattel figure, because they do tend to have a little bit of a quality control issue at times when it comes to the placement of the eyes of their figures, but you can see that on both sides of this Monolophosaurus, that is not the case. Both sides are perfectly placed, and just like with the Plesiosaurus, another really exciting aspect of the figure is the fact that we have a black pupil, as opposed to that kind of coloration before where they would just kind of give the eye like a coloration but leave the pupil area open so that then the coloration behind the eye would kind of become the pupil. We haven't done that here with this Monolophosaurus. Just like with the Plesiosaurus, they have given it just a straight up black pupil, which is a huge plus. Coming down into the mouth area, you can see that the teeth are painted quite nicely. They are painted with an off-white, similar to the Plesiosaurus that we've previously looked at as well. Very nice, very realistic coloration, I would say, for the teeth of the figure. And you can see the inside of the mouth is painted with a very nice dark pinkish coloration, beautifully glossed. You can see the upper side of the inside of the mouth, unfortunately, does not have any paint application, but the tongue area, kind of the skin flaps here on the side of the mouth and everything look great. There's no sloppiness as far as the paint of the teeth go either. Really nicely done there also. But then as we start to move down into the body, you can see that basically it's a combination, kind of almost a battle between that greenish coloration that's on the underbelly there and then this yellowish coloration up here, and you can kind of see areas where like that greenish coloration has kind of broken through the yellow. So it's a really nice mixture of the two colors, and it looks very realistic the way it's been applied. And that continues to run the course of the body. You could see the entire way down. You have a nice mixture of the green and the yellow kind of playing off of each other. It looks really, really nice the way that they've done that. It almost turns into like a striping effect right here above the hip region of the figure. But then as we move down into the body, primarily you don't have any nails painted or anything like that. You don't really have any other coloration, it seems. But if you actually flip the dinosaur over, which you can now actually see the Jurassic Facts app code right there if you would like to add that to your collection, but you can see the underside actually sports a black coloration, so there is some alternate variation of color, and you can see that really smooth transition between those colors as we move up into that green here on the side of the dinosaur. It's a very, very smooth, very realistic application of the paint and transition. But aside from those areas, again, you don't really have any other coloration. You can see that the black actually runs out here onto the tail and then transitions to the green up here on the upper side. So although it almost seems like there's no paint variation to the tail, there actually is. There's that black, nice smooth transition to the darker green, which is really cool to see some paint application on the tail because we don't get that too often, especially when it comes to Savage Strike figures. But other than that, again, there's no real paint application as far as the figure goes besides those areas, but I think it looks great. It's a very nice, very realistic color scheme for the Monolophosaurus that's beautifully applied by Mattel, and definitely one of my favorite versions of this figure. So after we had a little bit of stability issues with the figure standing previously, I just had to kind of move the legs apart a little bit, and it stood perfectly fine, which is one thing that's really good about the Mattel figures, as there's so much articulation and areas like being able to move the legs a little bit further apart on figures that you may have kind of some balancing issues. You can usually fix that by readjusting the legs. But as far as a size goes on the Monolophosaurus, for a length, you are looking at right around the 8-inch range, or about the 20-centimeter area. And then for a height, you are looking at, if we get it nice and close here, just a little hair over 3 inches, or about the 8-centimeter range. As far as articulation goes, we have the articulation in the jaw, which is actually activated by the tail, which is the action feature for the figure. So you can see if we push the tail down, it snaps the jaw shut. Not perfectly, but pretty well. You also have articulation there in the arms. They move forward and back, out away from the body. Same deal with the legs, forward and back, and then out away from the body, which is actually what helped us have our figure stand up quite nicely, and now he's not going to. Got to move those legs back out a little bit, and potentially it will stand. Let's try it facing this way. There we go, now it's standing. And I'm wrong. Move it back up. And it went back. Alright, so this guy does not like standing very much, but he's not. There we go. We just got to find the magic spot, I guess, to get it to stand. But as far as a size comparison goes, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Monolophosaurus. And you can definitely see that, again, it's pretty much your standard size as far as like a Savage Strike figure goes. Not too much larger than an Attack Pack figure, but sporting a little bit of extra flair to the figure, as we do have an action feature and stuff compared to the Attack Pack figures. But also, in general, I think is a really nice size for the figure. So this newest Savage Strike version of the Monolophosaurus is really quite nice. Definitely a beautiful looking figure for sure. And again, I've been a big fan of the Monolophosaurus sculpt since the initial release, which actually came with the Battle Damage Extreme Chomp and T-Rex. That was a Walmart exclusive. There was a really nice looking green version of the Monolophosaurus in that set, and I've been just a huge fan of that figure ever since then. And each and every time we get another version of it, I'm even more excited. I don't care how many repaints we get of the Monolophosaurus. I just love the figure. But this is definitely, in my opinion, one of the nicest ones that we've received so far. As far as the actual paint, you can see there's, again, a lot of paint application to the figure, with the really nice kind of like military green on the underside, the beautiful yellows up on the top, and then the red up there on the crest. I think that all looks great, especially the way all those colors play off of each other. And then you have those really nicely painted eyes with that green and the black pupils. Love the fact that Mattel is starting to include black pupils as opposed to just the coloration coloration that's behind the eye. That is a huge plus if you ask me, and all of the paint is nice and carefully applied. There doesn't seem to be any sloppiness as far as the paintwork goes on this figure. And another area that I really love is the fact that we have that darker coloration on the underbelly, which is very different than most times when we get figures. We usually get like a lighter underbelly. Well, on this one we have a darker underbelly, and I love the fact that that darker coloration runs all the way out onto the tail, giving it, again, that extra color variation in the tail area that we don't often see when it comes to Savage Strike figures. I would have liked for that yellow coloration to potentially maybe like stripe out onto the tail a little bit, just to include a little bit out there, but I don't hate the fact that it's not there either. It's just something that could have made a little slight improvement, I would say. The only area to the figure that I'm not a huge fan of is the fact that the mouth stays open. To activate the action feature, you have to push the button to make it snap shut. I know it wouldn't make too much sense for it to push the button and then have the mouth open, but personally, as far as like a collector's standpoint, I would have preferred that, because then the dinosaur wouldn't have to have its mouth so wide open and look a little bit goofy in the process. That's, again, the only downside, something that I would have personally changed as far as the figure goes. But again, a really beautiful sculpt, really nice looking paint scheme, pretty cool action features. So overall, it is a beautiful release of the Monolophosaurus, the Savage Strike version. So if you would like to pick this up, again, check your local Walmart or your Target. It should be there. If not now, sometime soon. And make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.